Welcome back to the program. Let's talk power. Line number 2. Morning, Danny. You're on the air.
Good morning, Batty. How are you?
Terrific today, sir. How about you?
Well, I'm doing really well. I mean, I never complain when I see the beautiful sunshine, and certainly when I'm not in Labrador, I'd love to be in a place that feels like Labrador, and that's what St. John's is feeling like this morning.
There you go. That's why we have an open heart and open arms for our brothers and sisters in Labrador.
No, I've never ever thought any different than that.
Of course not.
But I wanted to call in there this morning with especially the news from Hydro on certainly the likely prospect of rolling blackouts again in the next few days, and I'd like to pose the question, that I think the most salient question of all in the province concerning power is reliability.
Yep.
Because, I remember a time, maybe a couple of years ago, Patty, I called into you. I was on the way to Lewisport somewhere, and you were talking about energy deficit versus capacity deficit.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yes, I do.
And I sincerely thought at that time, because all the numbers were being put out by Newfoundland Hydro through the Public Utilities Board and everywhere else, that they have access at any given time, certainly in peak periods of demand, to 1,946 or so megawatts of power, which is a combination of Hydro's own generation, what they can get from Deer Lake Power, what they can get from Newfoundland Power, 54 megawatts we can get from wind, if the situation was in good shape, right?
Yeah, that's the maximum generation capacity on the island.
Yes, that's right. And I was looking at their demand and, over the years, and certainly there was always a 400 or 500 megawatt buffer between peak demand and the total capacity. And that was the difference between capacity and energy deficit because, of course, one is what you produce yourselves to meet your own demand. And there's no question that right now the problem is that capacity exists only on paper. And that is the thing now that I will certainly be trying to do through the Public Utilities Board is to put an end to this paper capacity that we have, because paper capacity is no good to somebody when they're cold. And that's where we find ourselves today. I mean, when you look back in the last 24 hours and Hydro tells you that the maximum capacity that they can get by pooling everything that they're talking about is 1,575 megawatts, well, then you're saying to yourself, what has happened there? Why are we in a situation where we can only do 1,575 megawatts when for years they've been telling the Public Utilities Board and everyone in this province that there's over 1,900 megawatts of capacity available?
Yeah, and that's if every single opportunity to generate power is working at their maximum. I think it's 1946. Is that the number used?
Yes.
It used to be 1958. There was a downgrade for whatever reason.
Yes.
From 2002 to 2013, the actual peak demand numbers, they vary, but not very much. Low water mark was 1,478. High water mark was 1,601. Right. All generally in the 1580s and 90s.
Yes.
So this is not anything untoward. This is not an unexpected peak demand request by the customers of Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro. The issue is how do we end up with the maximum generating capacity of 1,575?
Well, that's right. That's what, and that's the thing right now that has got to be peeled away, and confidence got to be brought back into the system to know that when Hydro says that they have 1,946 megawatts of power available, that it is reliable. That it is reliable capacity, because time and time again we have seen over the last year or so when that capacity evaporates, and that is unacceptable. That's what's unacceptable. That's what irritates people, and that's what should irritate people. Don't go telling us that you got 400 megawatts of spare capacity when it only exists on paper. That's cold comfort, and that's the kind of thing that we got to drill into and we got to put in place through the Public Utilities Board and through orders of the board to make sure that when somebody tells you they got this, that is going to actually exist.
But now, is there any room to accept the fact, and this is a question, I'm not making a statement, is there any room to accept the fact that we've had generating issues, whether it be Unit 1 at Holyrood, some downgrade of maximum capacity in Beta Spear because of whatever mechanical issue? Are those not legitimate reasons why? Now, whether or not it's the upkeep or maintenance schedule was inappropriate for the winter season is another question. But if we do indeed just have mechanical issues that lower our ability to generate power, is that just not a reality of life? And we can get into the competence of the schedule.
Yes, the realities of life are, except for acts of God, it should be reliable, but give them a bit of slack as well and say, yes, maybe 3 to 5% at any given time would be expected through mechanical unknowns to be unavailable. But when it comes to 25%, that's totally unacceptable. If they're telling you they got 1950 and they really only got 1500, that is absolutely unacceptable. And that's the position that we find ourselves in today. And I firmly believe, that we can trace this problem back to 10 years ago when we completed the last of the small hydro Granite Canal, 41 megawatts. The decision was made then by the government to not do any more of the small hydro, even though Round Pond was already engineered, ready to go at the same time as Granite Canal, 38 megawatts. That should have gone ahead, but the decision was made, we're not going to add any more generation on the island, we're not going to add any wind, we're not going to do anything to have a major conservation effort and do any type of price rationalization to see if that would affect demand. Nothing was done. And that's where we find ourselves today, because when you do nothing to generate extra power, because if we had put those 3 small hydros on over the last 10 years, added the wind that we know is quite appropriate for the island isolated system, and put the third line from the central part of this island into the Western Avalon, which would have reduced dramatically the use of Holyrood, and therein would have saved us millions of dollars in fuel, and that would have then set up a situation where we would have been able to save the money, have Holyrood less pressured, because when they made the decision not to go the route that I'm talking about, basically they made the decision to use Holyrood as a core generator of power.
Yeah.
That was never the intention, and never should be the intention of Holyrood.
I'd like to know what actually is the difference between the 1575 we can generate today and the 1946. Like, technically, it can't be just the mechanical difficulties at Holyrood and Beta Spear. It just doesn't add up in my head. Now, I'm not an expert in the field of megawattage, but I would like to know that firm number. And the plans of the past, the approach of the past, by relying on Holyrood or maintenance and general upkeep schedules, they're realistic conversations that will be examined in full, is my understanding, by the PUB. So we'll get answers to it. It still doesn't speak to any of the future needs, the reliability of the forecast of energy demand in the province. So there's still a lot of meat on that bone. Danny, anything else quick before I take another call in the break?
Well, I certainly hope that we don't get into the situation that we had, the crisis that we had in January. I certainly hope we can pull through this. But I just want to get this issue out there so people can focus around it and demand accountability. Demand accountability from our leadership and make sure that no stone is left unturned to give the confidence back into this system that when somebody says you have 1,500 or 1,800, or in this case 1,950 megawatts of power available, that is available what you need it. And today we need it. And now we find, once again, that we've been misled. And that is what irritates people, and justifiably so. So let's keep their feet to the fire. Let's demand accountability. Let's demand a confirmation that when you say you have something, except for acts of God, it should be there for you.
I guess that's what the PUB will determine in their review. And Morris sends me an email, and he's absolutely right. He says the 1946 is not the maximum island capacity; it's the firm capacity, it's the net capacity, and that's right. Maximum is closer to 2,500, which has never been produced in the history of man in this province. So he's right; it's a net capacity term, and the difference between the both is. Anyway, we won't debate that, but Morris is right.
We're not even looking for the theoretical.
We're not looking for theoreticals, that's right. But
we're only looking for what they tell me they can give me when we need it. What I'm finding is the audacity of being of repeatedly telling everybody, including the judicial quasi-judicial board, the PUB, that it is available, but when it comes time to need it, 20-some% is gone, flashed in thin air, and that's not acceptable.
Danny, it's not good enough if we get called. Now, I don't know if we're going to suffer any outages or rolling blackouts or the like in the next call step. We'll all hope not. But it's interesting that they give the heads up to people demand it. As soon as they do, the backlash is the same as when they didn't give it to you. But that's the precarious nature of being in government, and that's what you face when you put your hat in the ring. I know you know this because you've been there before. Appreciate the call this morning, Danny.
Appreciate your time again, and let's hope for the best.
Let's do that.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Yeah, you're right, Morris. That's right. Maximum capacity, 2,500 megawatts, is very much the theoretical. The net firm capacity on island generation is the 1946. It's not the maximum island capacity. There's a hair to be split there, but Morris, you're absolutely right, my friend.